GM, Audi, and Land Rover said that they are temporarily stopping sales in Russia. Joining us from his firm's office here in New York is Efraim Levy, autos analyst and S&P Capital IQ equity analyst. Efraim, what impact will this have on auto sales?
Okay, it's going to hurt sales in Russia, obviously. And just for a clarification, as I spoke with the company, they're cutting back wholesale sales to dealers, not necessarily to consumers. And actually, one of the things that consumers are doing in Russia is they're trying to find a store of value in hard assets, whether it's jewelry or furniture or cars, and therefore they're rushing out to make purchases of vehicles. So in the short term, that'll stimulate some sales, but as you go longer, the weak economy, the weak ruble will make it more expensive to buy a vehicle, will result in a continuation of what already was a decline in sales in Russia.
Do you see the other automakers following suit, like GM?
Well, there are differences in strategies in Russia. For example, Ford does not import any of its vehicles, while General Motors, I believe, imports some of its vehicles for sale, and that makes it harder, the currency risk. But right now, I think most of the companies are scaling back production so they don't get stuck with higher inventory to deal with the situation.
Mm-hmm. And which of the big U.S. automakers do you think have the most to lose in this situation if Russia doesn't stabilize?
Well, I haven't quantified it at all, but both Ford and General Motors would take a hit. It's a big market, not as big as China or the United States, but in Europe, it was competing with Germany to be the largest regional sales place for their vehicles.
You said earlier that there were people that were buying up jewelry and things. We read recently that there were a bunch of wealthy Russians that were buying up Porsche Carreras. Do you think that the luxury automakers will weather this storm better than the other car makers?
Well, I think they can as far as the longer term where affordability issue, but right now what they have to do is they have to balance the profitability of their vehicles, because if they're selling it in rubles and then they translate it into dollars, they're losing a lot. But companies like General Motors, they have experience in regions like South America, which has had similar types of devaluations or economic upheavals that they've had to deal with from time to time.
You just mentioned some South American countries. Countries like Venezuela, Brazil, and Mexico, which are also heavily dependent on oil. Do you see the same auto sales slowdown that we're seeing in Russia down there?
There will be an impact because of the oil situation, but there's also a different type of political situation that's factored in and complicating Russia. Obviously, the issues of Ukraine and Crimea.
Efraim, thanks for your time. That was Efraim Levy, autos analyst at S&P Capital IQ. For TheStreet, I'm Whalen MacHale in New York.